You should judge books by their covers. You should judge people by their faces. Before you get mad, pause for a second, because your brain already made that decision in less than a second. The real question is, what happens after that first judgment? We see a cover and decide if it's worth our time. We see a face and assume who someone is. And that's exactly why great books stay unread and great people get overlooked. We've all heard the saying, "Don't judge a book by its cover." It sounds wise, mature, and very well-intentioned. But let's be honest for a second. We absolutely do it. The proverb simply means this: don't decide the value of something or someone based only on how it looks. A small, plain book might hide a brilliant story. A quiet professor in old clothes might be a world-class scientist. What matters most is usually on the inside. Stories have been teaching us this lesson forever. In The Ugly Duckling, a strange gray bird is mocked by everyone around it, only to grow into a beautiful swan. The message is clear. Appearances are misleading. Why first impressions are so hard to ignore. Even though we know better, our brains still judge instantly. When we see a book cover, our mind starts making decisions without asking permission. Is this exciting? Is it scary? Is this something I'd want to be seen reading? Design plays a huge role here. Colors, fonts, and images send signals straight to our subconscious. Bright colors often suggest fun or adventure. Dark tones hint at mystery or danger. A single image can create curiosity or push us away before we've read a single word. Most readers decide whether a book is for them within seconds, not after reading a chapter, sometimes not even after reading the back cover. Just a glance is enough. When the same story gets ignored or becomes a hit, here's where it gets interesting. There are real cases where a book with a dull, uninviting cover sold almost nothing. The story didn't change at all, but when the cover was redesigned, suddenly readers paid attention. Sales followed. Curiosity kicked in. People finally opened the book. The content stayed exactly the same. Only the cover changed. That's how powerful first impressions are. Covers don't just decorate a book. They act like an invitation. If the invitation looks boring, people don't show up. When covers make promises they can't keep. Of course, this power can also backfire if a cover screams romantic and steamy, but the story inside isn't. Readers feel disappointed. A cover is a promise. When it doesn't match the content, trust is broken. Readers don't like feeling tricked. So while a good cover can pull people in, it has to be honest about what's inside. This lesson goes beyond books. This idea doesn't stop at book covers. We do the same thing with people. Psychologists call it the halo effect. If someone looks attractive or well put together, we often assume they're smarter, kinder, or more capable. On the other hand, if someone looks awkward or unfashionable, they may be judged unfairly before they even speak. Movies love challenging this bias. Think of Beauty and the Beast or Shrek. The character who looks frightening or strange turns out to be kind, brave, and lovable. The outside was misleading all along. Real life works the same way. Final thought. Yes, covers matter. Yes, first impressions are powerful. And yes, we all judge, even when we try not to. But the important thing is not to stop there. Open the book, read a few pages, give people a chance to show who they are. Some of the best stories and most interesting people don't stand out at first glance. So notice the cover, but don't let it be the end of the story. You might discover something remarkable hiding behind a very ordinary surface. Design by the numbers. How covers hack your brain. Professional cover designers don't just rely on good taste. They use psychology. Some covers are designed to quietly mess with your curiosity. Imagine a pattern of eyes staring back at you. Identical black pupils, except for one that's green. You don't know why it's different, but your brain refuses to let it go. You keep looking, you wonder, and suddenly, the only way to satisfy that curiosity is to open the book. Even small details can do a lot of work. Take a dark, moody cover with shadowy windows and a single porch light glowing in the night. That tiny light feels like an invitation, or a warning, or both. Before you've read a single page, your brain has already decided something unsettling is waiting inside. Great designers often say a book cover isn't meant to explain the story. It's meant to suggest it. It's a compressed version of the book's soul, a hint, a mood, a promise. If it creates emotion, it's doing its job. When the cover lies. But here's the danger. When the cover and the story don't match, readers feel cheated. Romance novels are a classic example. A glossy cover with a perfectly sculpted shirtless model clearly announces, this is a hot love story. If the book turns out to be slow, subtle, or barely romantic at all, readers won't be impressed. They'll be confused, or annoyed, or both. There's also the opposite problem. Sometimes a great story hides behind a painfully boring cover. One indie book had a dull brown design that, when shrunk down online, looked like something pulled straight out of the 1970s. Nobody clicked it, nobody bought it. The book practically didn't exist. Then the authors changed the cover, brighter colors, stronger contrast, a clearer message, and suddenly, after months of silence, the book made its first sale. Same words, same story, different jacket. The quiet truth about covers. A cover doesn't tell the whole story, but it decides whether the story gets a chance at all. That's the uncomfortable truth. Covers are not just decoration. They are emotional shortcuts. They whisper to the reader, this is for you, or keep scrolling. And while we like to believe we're above judging by appearances, our behavior says otherwise. The cover opens the door. The story has to prove it deserved to be opened. A powerful cover can pull you in or push you away. In the end, a cover has quiet power. It can attract you without you realizing why, or turn you off just as quickly. But here's the important reminder. A great-looking cover is still just marketing. The real value of a book, the part that actually matters, lives beneath the jacket. And this idea doesn't stop with books. The halo effect, how looks shape our judgments. What we do to books, we do to people too. Psychologists call it the halo effect. When someone looks attractive, confident, or well put together, we automatically assume other good things about them. We think they're smarter, kinder, more capable. One positive trait creates a halo that spills over everything else. There's also the darker twin of this bias, sometimes called the horn effect. If someone looks plain, awkward, or unfashionable, we may judge them more harshly. We assume laziness, incompetence, or lack of confidence, often without any real evidence. In other words, our brains like shortcuts. And appearances are the easiest shortcut of all. Here's the hook. What if your first impression is usually wrong? Research suggests that when people think they can judge personality from appearance, they're barely better than guessing. Yet we trust our first impressions anyway. Even in serious, real-world situations, looks quietly influence outcomes. People who appear more trustworthy are treated more gently. people who look attractive are often rewarded more generously. All of this happens while we tell ourselves we're being objective. That means a bad outfit, an awkward smile, or a pair of unfashionable glasses can unfairly shape how others treat you. Not because it makes sense, but because the human brain takes mental shortcuts. Stories keep reminding us for a reason. That's why this theme shows up again and again in stories and movies. Beauty and the Beast, Shrek. The frightening or ugly exterior hides a kind, loyal, or heroic heart. These stories work because they expose a truth we recognize in real life. Sometimes the monster is just misunderstood. Sometimes the most interesting person in the room is the one everyone overlooked. Same content, different cover, totally different result. This bias shows up clearly in publishing too. One author noticed that kids completely ignored a book with a dull cover. When the same book was released again with a brighter, more exciting design, it suddenly became popular. The story hadn't changed at all. Only the cover had. That's how powerful appearances can be, even when nothing underneath is different. Final takeaway: covers matter, first impressions matter. There's no denying that. But they are not the whole story. Whether you're choosing a book, a movie, or even deciding who to talk to, try to look a little deeper before making up your mind. Read a few pages. Start a conversation. Give things a second chance. Life is full of hidden gems, stories and people that don't stand out at first glance. So notice the cover if you must. Just don't stop there. Sometimes the most surprising swan is hiding behind the plainest feathers. Halo versus horn, judging by looks. This is how the bias usually works. If you look neat and stylish, people tend to assume you're capable and confident. That's the halo effect. But if you look scruffy or a bit nerdy, some may unfairly label you as lazy or uncool. Same person, different outfit, completely different judgment. Stories love playing with this idea. In Beauty and the Beast, a frightening appearance hides a gentle heart. In Shrek, the ugly ogre turns out to be brave and lovable. These stories stick with us because they reflect real life. Here's the hook. How many great people or stories do we overlook just because they don't look impressive at first glance? The same thing happens with books. One novel was ignored for months because of a dull cover. When it was re-released with a brighter design, it suddenly sold out. The story never changed. Only the cover did. So don't let appearances decide everything. Whether it's a book or a person, try looking past the surface. Some of the best surprises don't advertise themselves very well. So yeah, covers matter. First impressions are real. But here's the question. What's a book you almost ignored because of the cover? Or a person you misjudged at first but turned out completely different? I'm genuinely curious. Drop it in the comments. And if this made you stop and rethink how you judge things, you already know what to do. There's more like this coming.